All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We are talking about the Detroit Lions in today's video. Now, it's just preseason, but what a victory this past weekend against Kansas City, 24-23. Thrilling football game. Jake Bates drilling a 43-yarder to win the game and to win the job, even though they didn't bring any competition, but they just threw it all on his plate, see how he was going to react to it. He did a phenomenal job against the Giants a week or 2 weeks ago, and then he did a phenomenal job against Kansas City the other day. Did miss an extra point, but we'll get into that in a second here. Even though no starters were playing, there were numerous amount of Detroit Lions players that I was extremely impressed with. And when we're talking about a team like the Detroit Lions, a big Super Bowl favorite, 12-5, winners of the NFC North, a game away, pretty much a quarter or two away from making the Super Bowl. The starters are kind of in check here. What I'm curious about is depth. I'm curious about breakout players, and I want to talk about a bunch of them, specifically Jake Bates. Hendon Hooker had a huge bounce-back game, Khalil Dorsey, Sione Vaki, and then Isaiah Williams, because we ran out of time on our last video. But welcome back to the channel. Before we get further, hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content, along with a ton of Lions videos every single week. Lions fans, if we could try and get this video to 250 likes, that would be awesome. All right, Isaiah Williams. This is really important. This was a very important game for him. He had a really good game against the New York Giants in their first preseason game, but there's something going on in the wide receiver room, and it just is changing from a week-to-week basis, whether it's training camp and now preseason, which matters the most. Khalif Raymond, Jameson Williams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, those are your three roster locks, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the best wide receivers, most underappreciated receiver probably in the entire National Football League. And then you have Jameson Williams entering a huge third season, and we're all hoping, even if you're not a Lions fan, you're just hoping this kid breaks out finally, because you see the potential, you see it on the field. We saw it, wasn't it like the first play, your first offensive play against San Francisco, the dude ripped the 40-yarder. And then you have Khalif Raymond, Mr. Solid, Mr. Consistent, should be able to give you about 500 receiving yards at a bare minimum. Now, I do want to say, don't forget about Jahmyr Gibbs and his amazing pass catching ability. He's been really working on that. The Detroit Lions are really working on Jahmyr Gibbs' route running and pass catching this season, and he also showed us a lot of that potential last year. And then obviously you have Sam Laporta, you also have Brock Wright. But wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5, and maybe wide receiver 6, I have a hard time imagining the Lions will keep 6 receivers on this roster. Here's the battle: Donovan Peoples-Jones, Doris Fountain, Tom Kennedy, Maurice Alexander, Caden Davis, and then rookie Isaiah Williams. And it's interesting to me because, 2 weeks ago, and Antoine Green, who's on the IR, 2 weeks ago, it seemed like Antoine Green was wide receiver 3, like a lock to be wide receiver 3. And then it appeared last week against the New York Giants that it was probably going to be Doris Fountain. And now we're just kind of sitting here wondering, are they on the roster? Is wide receiver 4 on the roster? Well, Isaiah Williams is making a really nice case, not to necessarily be wide receiver 4. Folks, I'm talking about making the roster. He had a really long shot of looking in just because of all the potential and all the wide receivers that the Lions carried on their roster this summer. But Williams probably, in my opinion, just cemented his spot on the roster. He led the team in receiving yards for a second straight week. 6 catches, 71 yards, 53 of those came after the catch. That's just extremely important. Guys like Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, you love that. Yards after catch, 53 out of 71 after the catch. I mean, yeah, that's your stock is quickly rising. He also had 1 carry for 11 yards and 3 punt returns for 41 yards. And then his last punt return actually helped set up the Detroit Lions for the game-winning field goal. So he had a great day. Great day. He had a great day against the New York Giants last week. The fit is the big question mark I have with Isaiah Williams. And it just has to do with the fact that he's 5'10", he's 150, and the Lions seem like they're looking for more of a bigger receiver. Isaiah Williams is best suited for the slot. And the reason it's an issue is because Amon-Ra St. Brown and Khalif Raymond, their bread and butter is the slot. So I think Isaiah Williams just made the roster. We're about to find out, what, like I said, you asked us this question last week. I still thought Isaiah Williams Definitely stock rose after the Giants game, but as far as making the roster, I'm not really sure, right? Because Fountain played good, and you've got guys like DPJ that you literally traded for at the deadline last season. But it's something to keep an eye on. All right. So let me know what you guys are thinking. Is Isaiah Williams making this roster? Let me know down below. Sione Vaki, the versatility he has is unbelievable. He caught 4 passes for 60 yards this past Saturday against Kansas City. Here's a crazy statistic: 3.16 yards per route. All right. That was 3.16 yards per route run. 11 yards after catch per reception. Just like Isaiah Williams, I mean, this is stuff that makes Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell very, very, very happy. And Vaki was going to make the roster, but now I think he probably will have a literal role on this team. And I know that didn't seem that crazy heading into the season and heading into preseason, but I think that was just officially solidified through the first 2 preseason games. It was funny because you have David Montgomery and you have Jahmyr Gibbs, and drafting Vaki was kind of interesting, but he has just such a unique skill set, and it just seems like he's a gamer. He's just a gamer. The dude makes plays. He's just a smart, high IQ football player, and it's really cool because he only had 14 targets in his time at Utah, catching 11 passes for 203 yards and 3 touchdowns across 6 games. And 11 catches for 203 yards. I mean, that's pretty freaking good. So Vaki, very excited about him. We kind of mainly talked about him in our last Lions video. Then Khalil Dorsey also had a really good game. He allowed just 1.5 yards per reception on 2 catches, 3 targets. That was the lowest total of any cornerback who's allowed at least 2 catches in week 2 of the preseason. Along with Amik Robertson, they both had 2 defensive stops in pass play tackling. I think Khalil Dorsey just solidified himself on this roster. And then Hendon Hooker. He had a great game. I think I downplayed it a little bit too much in our last video. This is huge. And thankfully, shout out to the rain or lack of rain. Shout out to the weather gods, Mother Nature, because, Hendon had accuracy issues that were reported throughout training camp. He also had a finger issue, but he was phenomenal the other day. 12 of 15, 150 yards. Because if you remember Nate Sudfeld in the first preseason game, it was like, all right, he's certainly not making the roster, and he's certainly not going to be the backup quarterback. He did improve last week, but I think Hendon Hooker, pretty much just solidified himself as probably the backup QB. I wouldn't even be surprised if they bring in a vet at some point. But Jared Goff is very reliable as far as staying on the field. 12 of 15, 150 yards. Also added a rushing touchdown. He threw incompletions on his first 2 throws of the day, so he actually finished 12 of 13 after that. He looked really good. His passes were extremely accurate, and then 3 of his 5 drives resulted in points, 1 touchdown and 2 field goals. Now, he did have a fumble on a bad handoff, but the snap was a little bit high, so take it with a grain of salt. And then finally, we have Jake Bates. He did miss an extra point, but that's what training camp, that's what preseason is for, to just nail down that accuracy, because he clearly has a leg. He made all 4 of his field goals. His long was from 55 yards. He impressed us in the Giants' first preseason game. They're not going to bring any competition. The job is his, but we got to get that accuracy locked in. And then finally, I did actually want to talk about Josh Paschal, because he had a sack. He had a forced fumble. He would be huge because pass rushing is not necessarily a concern for me, but Marcus Davenport, can he stay on the field opposite of Aiden Hutchinson? So we'll talk about Josh maybe a little bit more in our next Lions video. But thank you guys for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. And let me know some standouts you saw from Saturday's game. And as always, let me know, is Isaiah Williams making this roster? Have a great day.